Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 9 wide receiver rankings for the 2020 fantasy football season. On today's episode, of course, we're talking about all things related to the wide receiver position. As we begin with wide receiver matchups, we'll talk about which defenses are giving up the most points to opposing wide receivers on average in a half PPR scoring format. Then after that, of course, we'll talk about my top 36 wide receiver rankings. For those of you who are looking for a specific player, you can go down into the description of the video. Again, these aren't going to be always up to date. For those of you who are watching it later in the week, again, rankings are always subject to change with injuries and different circumstances coming down the line as the week progresses. These rankings are always going to change in my mind. For those of you who are looking for up-to-date rankings, you can go to my Patreon, check the link down in the description of the video. Outside of that, you can join us 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll be talking Kickoff with Kirchhoff every Sunday morning. Assuming my internet doesn't go out midstream, everything should be good to go, as we've done already this season for the first 8 weeks. Outside of that, make sure you click the like button, subscribe to the channel. We are almost at 33,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for your incredible support. So again, we're making 2020 fantasy football content here on the daily. So again, subscribe to the channel. Now, before we begin today's video and start talking about wide receivers, I'm happy to announce that today's video is sponsored by Discord. Now, many of you have already taken advantage and joined our community Discord server, as we've created a community hub using their platform to talk about all things related to 2020 fantasy football and the Andrew Kirchhoff YouTube channel. With their incredible text communication services, whether it's voice, video, we've been able to communicate with each other on the daily basis to help each other out and help win 2020 fantasy football championships. I mean, just looking at our community forum, I mean, you can either ask questions about redraft leagues, dynasty leagues, DFS, our community Saturday AMAs. There are a lot of community events coming down the line as the Discord server continues to grow. But not only are we able to ask each other questions in the text communication forum, which is instant messaging in comparison to the comment section, which again, you got to wait for someone to respond to you. We've also had multiple conversations with one another. I mean, again, just this past week, I had a 2-hour conversation with those of you guys in the community who hopped in, and we just talked about all things related to football, whether it was just the NFL in general, whether it was injuries, rest of season players, whether it was just, hey, do you trust this player going forward? What about my waiver pickups? We talked about a lot of fantasy football. We enjoyed each other's presence, and that's the entire point of this Discord community server. To build a community, to give us an identity and talk to one another and help each other out for the remainder of the 2020 season. Now, many of you may be thinking, well, Andrew, that's a lot of great stuff, but there's got to be a paywall or something. There's not. Discord is absolutely free, and you can go ahead and go down to the description of the video and click on the first link and download it today. Whether it's on your desktop or on your smartphone, Android or iOS, you can download Discord today by clicking on that link and get yourself into our community server. Whether you have a Discord account or not, by clicking on that link, 3 quick and easy steps. You put in your email, password, get yourself connected, click on that link, join the community server, jump into one of the text channels, ask questions, paste yourself, one of your rosters, ask questions. Hey guys, should I drop these players off my bench? There are so many different things that you can do in the Discord community server, meet new people, and talk fantasy football for the entirety of the 2020 season. So again, I absolutely think you guys should take advantage of this incredible opportunity on hand. So what are you waiting for? Join today, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys really soon, answer your guys' questions. Again, there is always someone in that text channel, always typing, answering questions, asking each other questions. So even if I'm not there, even if I'm not behind my computer screen, there's going to be other people to talk to. There's going to be a community in which you can build friendships with. And I'm telling you, as we progress, as we continue to build our community and grow, it's only going to get better. So again, join today. Thank you very much. All right, now that that's all covered, let's go and start talking about matchups at the wide receiver position for Week 9 of the 2020 fantasy football season. As you can see on screen, it's not really a surprise. The Seattle Seahawks are giving up the most points to opposing wide receivers, 59.33.5 PPR scoring format per week. That is an insane number, and the amount of passing yards to opposing wide receivers is just, it's not even close to the rest of the field. The Seattle Seahawks secondary already missing one of their starting corners. They're definitely going to be underhanded this upcoming week against the Buffalo Bills. Again, the Tennessee Titans, they themselves progressively have been getting worse in the secondary. I know they made a trade for Desmond King, one of the better slot corners in the National Football League. They cut Jonathan Joseph, but I don't know how much of a difference that is going to make, because a lot of the pieces in their secondary just haven't been performing this season. Maybe they can turn it around for the second half. But again, that is going to be an incredible advantage for a guy like Allen Robinson. The Minnesota Vikings will take on, of course, Marvin Jones. Kenny Golladay will be out this week with that hip injury. Outside of Marvin Jones, I'm not really sure if there's anybody else that could take advantage of Maybe Marvin Hall on that team, Damian Amendola, but really it's just going to be between Marvin Jones and potentially TJ Hawkinson, but we'll talk about tight ends tomorrow. Outside of that, Cleveland Browns, of course, are on a bye week, so we won't be able to take advantage of the matchups of the Cleveland Browns or the Philadelphia Eagles, the Los Angeles Rams, or the Cincinnati Bengals this week. So just keep that in mind. The Atlanta Falcons, of course, are giving up a lot of points to opposing wide receivers as their secondary has been beat up all season long, and they've given up a lot of great performances and just couldn't stop anybody this year. This past week, they had their best performance against the team in Carolina, but that was a surprise in itself. But still, Curtis Samuel was still able to put up about 20 points. So either way, the Houston Texans, of course, coming off the bye, will take on the Jacksonville Jaguars with a second string quarterback there in Jacob Luton. So we'll see exactly how that's going to match up and how DJ Chark could potentially play. But again, one of the better matchups. Pittsburgh takes on the Dallas Cowboys. That should be great. The Cowboys take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Just depending on who is ending up as the starting quarterback this week for the Cowboys, we'll kind of have to monitor that as the week progresses. The Giants give up a lot of points. And of course, the Dolphins will be playing against the Cardinals. So those are some of the easier matchups of the wide receiver position. Again, just kind of giving you some perspective as of the positions that you might want to go ahead and avoid, and maybe you don't want to play your wide receivers into these matchups. The Washington football team, the Chicago Bears, Kansas City Chiefs, Carolina Panthers, these are technically some of the tougher matchups at the wide receiver position. But that being said, I'm still confident in the potential of guys like Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard this upcoming week playing against Washington. I still think that there is a very good chance that Corey Davis and A.J. Brown are both going to be successful against the Chicago Bears, despite how great they've been all season long against opposing wide receivers. The Carolina Panthers take on the Kansas City Chiefs. Both these teams are not great in terms of stopping the run, but I guarantee you both of them will be having to air it out, and they will both succeed in the passing game because this could be quite the shootout between these two teams. The Buffalo Bills, of course, they've had one of the better secondaries in the league, of course, with Tre'Davious White, but they've also been beat up. So there are obviously some opportunities that teams have taken advantage of this season against them, specifically the Tennessee Titans a couple weeks back. But usually teams just want to run the ball on the Buffalo Bills, so they've kind of hid their beat up secondary over the last couple weeks. But just giving you some perspective as to which defenses aren't giving up many points to opposing wide receivers. Now that we've covered that, we can go ahead and move on to our top 36 wide receiver rankings on the week. Starting off with my number one, and it shouldn't really be a surprise, it is Davante Adams. Of course, since coming back from his injury, he has been on fire. Really, nobody's been able to stop Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, as that combination has just been one of the most potent wide receiver to quarterback combinations in the last 4 seasons. So again, it's not really a surprise that just this past Sunday, he had himself 5 catches, 3 of those being receiving touchdowns, 26.8 points in a half PPR scoring format. He takes on the San Francisco 49ers. All we got to do is go back to the last NFC Championship game between the Green Bay Packers and the San Francisco 49ers. Davante Adams imposed his will on that secondary, and it was against Richard Sherman, and Richard Sherman's not coming back anytime soon. That secondary for the 49ers beat up, and they're not going to be able to bottle up Davante Adams as much as they'd like to, and they don't have the pass rush right now in comparison to last year to put enough pressure on Aaron Rodgers. I think Davante Adams is absolutely going to take over. He's going to see himself 10 plus targets. He's got the opportunity. He's got the ability down in the red zone, and with all the other pieces of this offense, either being injured, popped on the IR list, or just not really being able to produce on a weekly basis, it just seems like Davante Adams on a consistent weekly basis is the number one and should be our number one wide receiver for this upcoming week. DeAndre Hopkins coming off the bye week. Again, DeAndre Hopkins is one of the best wide receivers in the league. Right now, he is leading the league in receiving yards. He has 704 receiving yards in 7 games. That's right, 100 yards per game average. Not a lot of other wide receivers are even close to that. And that being said, I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, can he really be stopped? Is Miami's defense that's giving up the 10th most points to opposing wide receivers going to stop him? Because Robert Woods just this past weekend had himself 2 receiving touchdowns in the best game of his season. Cooper Kupp on 21 targets had himself 11 receptions for 111 yards. So again, the wide receiver position against the Miami Dolphins has taken advantage of it. We're talking about DeAndre Hopkins, who right now this season is averaging 16.4 fantasy points per game in a half PPR scoring format. 100 yard per game average. He's going to get himself a touchdown. The offense for the Cardinals continuing to build up. They're just coming off of a nice week of rest and preparing for the Miami Dolphins. Should be a great play. DeAndre Hopkins at number 2. Number 3 is DK Metcalf. Now, of course, the week that Tyler Lockett went off for 45 points, And many of you DK Metcalf owners sat there and were like, I cannot believe DK Metcalf gave me a 3-point performance. Well, he ended up recovering and kind of giving you a little bit of a redemption week here in week 8. His performance against the San Francisco 49ers was unfreaking believable. 15 targets, 12 receptions, 161 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns for 34.1 fantasy points. He takes on the Buffalo Bills. Of course, the Buffalo Bills aren't one of the defenses that you definitely want to take advantage of because, again, they do have Tre'Davious White, and I guarantee you he'll be shadowing DK Metcalf for the entire game, but I'm not really concerned about that. I still think that regardless of what the defense is going to show, if they want to double cover DK, it is going to be impossible for them to stop the Seattle Seahawks offense, which will eventually peel off a little bit of pressure from DK. Right now, he's the number 2 wide receiver in fantasy. I think he's only 0.6 points behind Calvin Ridley in a half PPR scoring format. He has himself 7 touchdowns in the first 8 games, and I'm extremely excited about this back and forth shootout between Seattle and Buffalo this week. I think DK is in line for a great performance. Julio Jones is my number 4. And Julio, since coming back from his injury, my goodness, these wide receivers have just been incredible. Hopefully Michael Thomas can get a little bit of that. But Julio in the last couple weeks, in the last 3 weeks, he's averaged 8 receptions and 124 receiving yards per game. Last week, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, they dominated the secondary of the Denver Broncos. And I think that there is a very good chance that either Julio and Calvin Ridley are going to pop off in this week's game. Again, Julio Jones is going to be asked to do more and more as the weeks progress. He is the best player in that offense or on that team in general. So you have to go ahead and get him the ball as much as you possibly can. I think as the weeks have gone on, of course, averaging 8 catches per game in the last 3 weeks, that means the targets are there, opportunities there, and of course, eventually touchdown upside will be down the line. I think Julio Jones is a fantastic play this upcoming week against Denver. He's my number 4. Number 5, speaking of a little bit of the magic coming off of injury, rubbing off on Michael Thomas, hopefully we'll see an active Michael Thomas this week. Again, we haven't seen him play since week 1, and it's week 9 now. So maybe it's finally time for him to figure it out and get into the starting lineup of the New Orleans Saints because, my goodness, did they need him. This upcoming week, they take on a division rival in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay, they're giving up the 10th fewest points to opposing wide receivers. And in comparison to last year, that is a huge difference. That defense has improved tenfold all across the board, whether it's pass rush, linebacking play, and of course their secondary. So the question remains, what can we expect to see from Michael Thomas if he's healthy and ready to go? This offense absolutely needs a wide receiver 1. They're throwing the ball to Alvin Kamara 10 plus times a game, in which a couple dump offs here and there are great, but you need someone to be able to stretch the field and make plays down the field. And that's Michael Thomas. I think the possibility of 10 minimum targets is a guarantee. And if he ends up catching himself 10 plus passes, that is not going to be a surprise because that's what he's capable of doing. Let's not forget what Michael Thomas was capable of last year, breaking the records for the most catches in a single season. I think he's ready to get back. If he's good to go, he's going to dominate against the Tampa Bay defense. Tyreek Hill is my number 6. Tyreek Hill has been an extremely potent wide receiver in fantasy, not because of his opportunity, but more because of his touchdown upside. On a weekly basis, Tyreek Hill maybe catches the ball 4 to 6 times. That's a pretty solid week for Tyreek Hill. You're not going to see him catch the ball 12 times. That is honestly an anomaly, even though we've seen him do it before. Go back to Tennessee last season, that matchup, or in the regular season against Tennessee last season. But regardless, he takes on the Carolina Panthers. They are one of the tougher defenses, but again, a lot of teams like to run the ball on Carolina because they find their most success there. That being said, thus far this season, Tyreek Hill has scored 8 touchdowns in 8 games. This past week, he came off of a 4-catch, 98 receiving yard, 2 receiving touchdown game against the New York Jets, in which he torched that secondary and he made it look easy. I think he'll once again end up finding himself in the end zone, scoring a pretty big play, and having himself a fantastic week, and that is why he has consistently stayed in this top 6 category. He's my number 6 on the week. We move on to Tyler Lockett as our number 7. Of course, we talked about a little bit of DK Metcalf and the fact that he'll probably be shadowed by Tre'Davious White. Now, the thing about the Buffalo Bills and the thing about Tyler Lockett, the Buffalo Bills this season have already shown that they are a team that has struggled against opposing slot receivers. Tyler Lockett lives and dies at the slot position. That's where he's made his entire career up. So as of right now, I think there is a very good chance that he takes advantage of this advantageous matchup and ends up performing well. But the question is, which Tyler Lockett are we going to see? Because we see Tyler Lockett that's on fire and then Tyler Lockett that disappears on a weekly basis. If we're just going to go off the pattern, he pops off this week, and that's what I'm hoping that we see. Again, this is a wide receiver that's been fantastic this week, or this year in general, but this week It's going to be a matter of, can he stay consistent, get an ample amount of targets, and then be able to deliver. If in fact Seattle takes too early of a lead and they are dominating against Buffalo and he gets kind of opted out of the game plan, that's when we begin to see Tyler Lockett struggle. Hopefully that's not going to be the case. I expect him to play well as my number 7 this week. Our number 8 wide receiver on the week is Keenan Allen, and Keenan Allen's been absolutely fantastic. Just looking at his stats last week against Denver, 11 total targets, 9 receptions, 67 receiving yards, and a touchdown. That's 17.2 fantasy points. That's back-to-back weeks of 17 fantasy points in a half PPR scoring format. And the fact of the matter is, Keenan Allen has been just as consistent as DeAndre Hopkins in fantasy this year. Now, let me tell you how. If we go ahead and eliminate the 2 games in which Keenan Allen either didn't play the full game or didn't have Justin Herbert in the lineup, we go ahead and we find ourselves, of course, excluding game 1 where he played with Tyrod Taylor and excluding game 5 against the New Orleans Saints, which he left with back spasms at the end of the first half. In the other games that Keenan Allen has played with starting quarterback Justin Herbert, he's averaged 16.34 fantasy points per game. That's 0.06 points less per game than DeAndre Hopkins. That's how you know the quarterback play of Justin Herbert has positively affected Keenan Allen. And not only that, when this offense is scoring 30 plus points a game and their defense isn't stopping a soul, it's continuing to lead to Keenan Allen getting more targets, more opportunity, and of course succeeding because he is a fantastic wide receiver in the National Football League. He's playing out of his mind right now, and I think he's only getting better as the weeks progress, as Herbert continues to get better. He's my number 8, and I'm really happy about it. Our number 9 for this week is Adam Thielen. And the thing about Adam Thielen is that I kind of think he's almost similar to Tyler Lockett to the extent where both of them are super dependent on touchdowns, and they also somehow come up with inconsistent performances because in those games, they're kind of moved out of the game script. Now, let me explain why. Similar to last week, Tyler Lockett didn't have a great game. Adam Thielen didn't have a great game because they weren't in the game plan. But Adam Thielen's game plan was mainly had to do with weather and Dalvin Cook having 4 touchdowns. Those are not things that are going to be consistent on a weekly basis. In fact, when you play against the Detroit Lions this upcoming week, that is all going to kind of level itself out, and you'll find yourself finding more opportunity and more stability from a player like Adam Thielen. Let's not forget, he scored 7 touchdowns this year. He's been an extremely consistent play. I know he's had 2 performances in which many of you question his sustainability throughout the season, but to be honest, I have no complaints. I think Adam Thielen has been all that he's been advertised this offseason. And I think as he continues to perform and these teams continue to be in shootouts, Adam Thielen just seems like a guy that I can continue to rely upon. I really do like the fact that Detroit's secondary has been beat up and hasn't been able to find consistency there. Adam Thielen's going to be able to expose that this upcoming week. Number 10 is Stefon Diggs. Again, he plays against the easiest matchup at the wide receiver position. The Seattle Seahawks are giving up the most points to opposing wide receivers. In fact, this season, they've given up 80 plus receiving yards to 12 different wide receivers. That number, I don't even know if any other teams have given up that many yards to opposing wide receivers. I'm going to go ahead and guess that that's probably not the case. They're awful defensively. And Stefon Diggs being the number 1 offensive threat in terms of the passing game for the Buffalo Bills just seems like he's going to find automatic success. This past week against the New England Patriots, again, a tougher secondary, but didn't have Stephon Gilmore on him. He was still able to produce 6 receptions for 92 receiving yards. As the weeks progress, Josh Allen has gotten worse and worse, and hopefully he can go ahead and find a rebound week here against Seattle secondary that has really been giving up just about anything to opposing wide receivers and quarterbacks. So again, I think Stefon Diggs could have himself a bounce back week here. He's played against Seattle many times before, and I think he'll be comfortable against that secondary. We have Will Fuller as my number 11, a player that potentially should have been traded before the deadline, but the Packers decided against it. Now, of course, Will Fuller has been fantastic this season. In fact, he has scored a receiving touchdown in each of the last 5 games that he has played. This upcoming week, they take on the Jacksonville Jaguars, one of the worst secondaries in the National Football League. And the last time we saw Will Fuller against them, 8 targets, 4 receptions, 58 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Again, he has found consistent play this year. He has stayed healthy, and he has become their number 1 wide receiver in the absence of DeAndre Hopkins. I think Fuller has been fantastic. I don't see a problem with this matchup, and that is why, once again, he is in the top 12 because he's earned it week over week, having fantastic performances. So he's my number 11. Number 12 is Allen Robinson. We mentioned this a little bit earlier when we talked about the Tennessee Titans defense. Tennessee cannot stop a soul. Their secondary has been struggling all season long. So where does this kind of leave us with Allen Robinson? As of right now, Allen Robinson coming off a fantastic performance against the New Orleans Saints, something that I obviously anticipated because New Orleans can't stop a soul either in their secondary. Allen Robinson had himself 6 catches, 87 yards, and a touchdown, 17.7 points. Takes on the defense that gives up the second most points to opposing wide receivers. In fact, Tennessee has given up 6 receiving touchdowns to opposing wide receivers in just the past 3 weeks. So the way it looks, Nick Foles, Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, these guys are probably going to be in a pretty advantageous spot this week, and that is why Allen Robinson finds himself in the top 12 as our number 12 this week. Number 13 is Chris Godwin, and I think once he comes back, he's already practiced in full today. That is a great sign to see. Once he comes back this week, he's pretty much going to pick up where he left off. I mean, the last time we saw him against the Las Vegas Raiders, he had 9 targets, 9 receptions, 88 receiving yards, and a touchdown for 19.3 points. That is the kind of production I anticipate from him every single week. Why? Because as the slot receiver of a Tom Brady-led offense, you are obviously going to see double-digit targets. When you get Antonio Brown on the outside, and of course, the resurgence of Gronk, of course, there are going to be some targets pulled away as the weeks progress, but I still think that this team is going to throw the ball a lot, and they're going to find Chris Godwin open a lot as the other threats of the team, Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, and Gronkowski, are pulling coverage and allowing Chris Godwin to dominate underneath. So again, he should be fantastic. They take on the New Orleans Saints, a defense that, in my opinion, like I mentioned with Allen Robinson, isn't great and has been, pretty much beat up all season long and hasn't really been able to find their footing in the last couple of years. I think Godwin's a fantastic play as my number 13. 14 is A.J. Brown. Now, A.J. Brown drops a little bit mainly because of the coverage. I mean, the Chicago Bears have been one of the better defenses in the leagues, but they've been one of the better coverage defenses in the leagues, to say the very least. This past week, of course, A.J. Brown struggled. 4 catches, 24 yards, and a touchdown against Cincinnati, which should have been an easy matchup. But again, I still think that A.J. Brown is a fantastic wide receiver. I still think he is a valuable fantasy play, and that's why he sits at 14. I don't think that the Chicago tough coverage is going to completely eliminate his value, but I think it's not going to lead to a 20 to 25 point performance. I think where he performed last week to potentially getting a couple more receptions is where he'll pretty much average out this upcoming week. That's why I have him at 14. I still have a lot of confidence in him. He always will have the ability to make one play, 70 yards, and a touchdown. So, of course, A.J. Brown continues to get the respect at number 14. Number 15 is Calvin Ridley. Now, I only dropped Calvin Ridley to the number 15 spot, and that's pretty much as far I was going to go in dropping him because I'm not 100% certain as to where he's going to play this week. Again, he's dealing with a midfoot sprain. Chris Carson ended up missing a week from it, could miss 2 weeks from it. And it looks like there is a very good potential that if, in fact, Calvin Ridley is not able to practice on his foot this week, that he could once again miss this week's game against the Denver Broncos. If that's the case, Julio, of course, gets all the targets and gets all the receptions. But if Calvin Ridley is ready to go, again, we mentioned earlier, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams dominated against that secondary, pretty much could not stop the Chargers passing offense for a majority of that game. And I think, of course, Calvin Ridley should be able to take advantage of that as he is, as of right now, the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy in a half PPR scoring format. So again, as long as he's ready to go, I'm extremely excited about it. One stat that I wanted to mention before we continue, Calvin Ridley, again, he is the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy, but if we go ahead and eliminate the games where he was injured, the Green Bay game, and of course this past week against Carolina, those are 2 games with a midfoot sprain and an ankle injury that he was definitely hindered by. Every other game in which he's been fully healthy, he's averaged 20.15 fantasy points per game in a half PPR scoring format. So just to put that in perspective, he has been unstoppable this year. Moving on to Justin Jefferson as my number 16. The Minnesota Vikings, again, did not have to pass the ball this past week, just like we talked about with Adam Thielen. Of course, the wide receiver position had the inconsistency this week. The weather wasn't great, a lot of wind. So they just ran the ball, they took the lead, and they continued to run out the clock and dominate the time of possession. Let's not forget the consistency and or upside play of Justin Jefferson. In 3 out of the last 5 weeks, he's had over 100 receiving yards. And I think as long as he's seeing games of 7+ targets, that is where he's going to find his most potential in this offense. Because again, if he's only going to get 4 to 5 targets every single game, he has to go ahead and deliver and get a 40-yard bomb or catch a touchdown, because otherwise his consistency and floor is not going to be there. So again, we're looking for upside play. We're looking for more opportunity in the passing game. I think we'll see that. I think they'll go ahead and continue to utilize him more and more every week. He's my number 16 on the week. Brandin Cooks is 17. Again, Brandin Cooks in the last 3 games has been unbelievable. Of course, they're coming off the bye week, but prior to the bye week, I mean, Brandin Cooks, just reading the stat is just going to blow my mind. In the last 3 weeks, he's had 30 total targets. So that's 10 targets per week in the last 3 weeks in an offense that, of course, hasn't been playing well, but has definitely allowed Brandin Cooks to kind of come out of his shell with the Houston Texans after being traded this offseason from the Rams. So Brandin Cooks, the last time he played against the Jacksonville Jaguars, didn't hold anything back. 12 targets, 8 receptions, $161 and a touchdown, 26.1 points. I don't think the Jacksonville Jaguars will be able to stop him, Will Fuller, or Deshaun Watson. I think this is going to be a one-sided affair, and therefore I have 2 Houston Texans, of course, in my top 17. Brandin Cooks is a fantastic play this week in my eyes. Robby Anderson is my number 18. Of course, Robby Anderson started off hot this season and has kind of progressively slowed down. I think he'll get back on track this year with this upcoming week's game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, the Kansas City Chiefs are one of the better, coverage secondaries in the National Football League. In terms of stopping the run, they're not great, but I think Robby Anderson's opportunity needs to continue to go up. I think Teddy Bridgewater, after getting that late hit, kind of disappeared in the second half. The weather got in the way, and really, it just wasn't clicking for him. Maybe he had a little bit of a concussion-like symptom. Maybe he just wasn't all there in the second half, but Teddy Bridgewater had never played that bad this season. And to be honest, there wasn't a single quarterback to throw for less than 200 yards against the Atlanta Falcons all season long, and Teddy Bridgewater was one of them. So again, I'm going to go ahead and chalk that game up to that was an injury for Bridgewater, and that's what affected his receivers. But again, I think Robby Anderson should be able to pop back into the top 18 conversation, as that's where he's been all season long. I think he'll find consistency there this week. Number 19 is Terry McLaurin. Again, McLaurin has been one of the better wide receivers. I think with Kyle Allen, of course, he's gotten even more opportunity. In the last 2 games with Kyle Allen as their starting quarterback, Terry McLaurin has had 23 total targets. Fantastic. 14 receptions, 164 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. Again, one of those games was against the New York Giants, had himself 11 targets, had himself 7 catches for 74 yards. That is a great number. That's only going to increase even against tougher coverage like the New York Giants potentially have this week. I still think that Terry McLaurin should be a great play. Always has the ability to score a touchdown on any single play. Just throw it up. He's going to go find it, and he's going to be able to perform with it. I think Terry McLaurin is a great play this week at number 19. 20 is Chase Claypool. Yeah, so here's my thought process. I don't know if Diontae Johnson is going to play. He's dealing with a hamstring injury. Typically, hamstring injuries that kind of limit you and knock you out of a game typically take 1 to 2 weeks to kind of recover from. Maybe it's worse. Maybe it's a grade 2 strain, grade 3 strain. That's when we start talking about other scenarios. But as of right now, what I've witnessed from the Pittsburgh Steelers is when Diontae Johnson either gets knocked out of a game or isn't playing, Chase Claypool has scored a touchdown in every single contest in which Diontae Johnson is gone. You play against the Dallas Cowboys. They give up the 7th most points to opposing wide receivers thus far this season. And in fact, they've given up 15 touchdowns to opposing wide receivers this season. I don't know if anybody's even up there with that number. I think Minnesota's tied with them in terms of giving up receiving touchdowns to opposing wide receivers. So it's an unbelievable statistic. And I think, of course, they're going to take advantage of it. I think Claypool is an automatic play this week as my number 20 in a fantastic matchup. DJ Moore, speaking of the Carolina Panthers playing against the Kansas City Chiefs, I still think that besides Robby Anderson popping back and getting himself a great performance, I think there's a very good likelihood that even DJ Moore comes back from the dead. I know this past week didn't see a target or a reception until the 4th quarter. Let's remember, we're getting Christian McCaffrey back. He fully practiced today. That is going to unlock this offense and give more of a threat to the backfield that we haven't seen before. Having defenses have to respect that, it'll open up more opportunity for their receiving options. Let's not forget, in the past 3 weeks, prior to this past week against the Atlanta Falcons, DJ Moore was on a consistent level of play. 21 targets, 13 receptions, 279 yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns for 52.4 points in that 3-week span. He was averaging 7 targets, 4 receptions, 93 yards, and a touchdown every single game. So again, he will get back to being consistent. I believe in DJ Moore, and I'm ready to go ahead and start him as my 21 this week. Number 22 is Antonio Brown. You may be wondering, Andrew, are you serious? Yes. I really do believe that Antonio Brown was brought to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for a purpose. He is going to be utilized by Tom Brady to the maximum capacity that they possibly can. I don't know what AB we're going to see, but I'm willing to take the risk and go ahead and put points on the line to say that I think that Antonio Brown is, sure, not as good as he used to be for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but is still going to be a fantastic wide receiver in the National Football League, at least among the top tier of the entire echelon or, S tier of the group. I don't know if he's an S tier. Maybe he's an A tier at this point. But either way, I still think that Antonio Brown has a lot left in the tank. I know he's getting older. I know the concussions. I know everybody's conversations. But we're talking about straight football. We're talking about wide receiver versus cornerback. And I don't think it is going to be easy for the New Orleans Saints, especially what they've been dealing with in the secondary, to be able to spread themselves thin enough against this coverage and be able to stop Antonio Brown. I think Brady's going to get him the ball. I think he's probably going to score on the first game, just like he did last year with the Patriots against the Dolphins. First game, he shows up, boom, scores. Every ball on that single drive was thrown in his direction. So again, I think AB should be a great play this week. Juju Smith-Schuster is my number 23. Again, you play against Dallas. I think Big Ben is going to have himself a little bit of a bounce back week here. I think Juju Smith-Schuster can have himself another consistent week here in which he's getting himself utilization and targets in this offense. I know Juju Smith-Schuster has been a bit inconsistent, but in the last 2 weeks, he's seen a total of 22 total targets. That is a great number. This past week, 7 catches for 67 yards, 10 fantasy points. I think that'll only go up. Like I mentioned earlier, they're giving up a lot of touchdowns to opposing wide receivers there in Dallas. They're really struggling to be able to cover guys. So I think Juju should be able to take advantage of it with Big Ben and potentially score a touchdown this week, which would be nice. Corey Davis is my 24. Again, Corey Davis in terms of targets, 10 each of the last 2 weeks. This past week, 8 catches for 128 yards and a touchdown against Cincinnati. A lot of the yards that maybe should have went in the direction of A.J. Brown, but I'm not complaining. When I put Corey Davis up against A.J. Brown this season, they have the exact same amount of targets. Corey Brown leads in receptions. Corey Brown leads in receiving yards. And only A.J. Brown leads by 2 touchdowns. Now, the question is, okay, Andrew, sure, maybe Corey Davis leads in 2 of the categories there, but maybe he's played more games. No. A.J. Brown and Corey Davis have both played 5 games, and their statistics are almost identical. The only difference being that A.J. Brown has 2 more touchdowns. So again, let's not forget Corey Davis is an extremely valuable asset of this offense and is stealing a lot of value from Jonnu Smith and definitely delivering on it. He's my number 24 on the week. We have Brandin Aiyuk as my number 25. Kendrick Bourne went to the injured IR list with COVID. Kittle's gone. Debo's gone. Raheem Mostert's on IR. Tevin Coleman's out this week. No Jeff Wilson Jr. There are literally, and they haven't even had Jordan Reed return. They are very thin all around the board. But I still think that on Thursday night, if this matchup still, continues to happen, pre this entire debacle with COVID and both the teams getting popped with it, I think there's a very good chance that Brandin Aiyuk in the combination with Nick Mullins are going to be able to deliver. Again, this past week, 11 targets, 8 receptions, 91 yards, and a touchdown. We saw the most relevance from Brandin Aiyuk when, in fact, Mullins came in the game. So again, if in fact Mullins is able to at least string together something nice or get some garbage time points for Aiyuk, I think he's still going to be a very, pretty good value. Marvin Jones Jr. is my number 26, and he is continuously going to have to live up to the expectation of what we expect on a weekly basis from Kenny Golladay. Now, I've gone ahead and I've, kind of pulled back my total expectations of him. I think, of course, this is a fantastic matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. They gave up a lot of touchdowns this year. In fact, they've given up 15 receiving touchdowns to opposing wide receivers this season, tied with the Dallas Cowboys. So, again, they've given up a lot. Their secondary, beat up, injured, COVID, all of it. Young, inexperienced rookies, doesn't matter. Marvin Jones, when he has been by himself without Kenny Golladay in the lineup, hasn't been as great this season, but I'm hoping that he's going to have himself a pretty good game here. Again, I'm not going to anticipate, a touchdown and huge yardage. I'm just going to hope that Marvin Jones ends up playing well and putting up a good performance and giving us at least a decent wide receiver 2-3 flex play this week. And that's why I have him at 26. 27 is Mike Williams. Again, Mike Williams had himself honestly an incredible performance. The one-handed receiving touchdown he had, the fact that he almost had a second touchdown, if it wasn't for the fact that he kind of ran out of real estate and had to dive and try to reach for the pylon, he could have had 2 receiving touchdowns this past week. The thing is, Justin Herbert loves to throw the ball deep. He has a cannon of an arm. Guyton, the other wide receiver, has definitely benefit from it, but I think as the weeks progress, Mike Williams will get more and more opportunity. This past week, 8 targets, 5 receptions for 99 receiving yards and a touchdown, 18.5 fantasy points, plays against Las Vegas. Again, when they played against the New Orleans Saints in week 5, when Keenan Allen went down, Mike Williams stepped up, had himself a handful of receptions, had himself over 100 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. We've seen these performances before, and as long as they continue to build chemistry, I think Mike Williams will be able to perform even against Las Vegas. DJ Chark's my 28. I think based on the fact that, of course, you play against Houston, it is a easier matchup, and we've seen DJ Chark perform against them in his career, but it's all going to depend on Jacob Luton. The backup quarterback, now that, of course, Gardner Minshew is going to be out for a week or two, the question is, what can this quarterback produce? If he is not funnel targeting DJ Chark, we're going to have a problem. I think DJ Chark has already had a problem this season, besides the fact that he's been injured, he has been ignored, and the Jacksonville Jaguars just don't want to win games. All of that in combination has kind of leaned me away from DJ Chark. That is why he's as low as he is in my rankings right now. I think he could be better. I think he has top 12 upside every single week, but it's all going to matter this week on how much opportunity and quarterback play is going to benefit him. So that's why I leave him at 28. Number 29 for this week is Mike Evans. Now, here's the thing. Mike Evans is a fantastic wide receiver in the National Football League right now. I mean, even this past week, when many of you were saying he's going to get locked down by Bradbury, he still had himself 5 catches, 55 yards, and a touchdown. And to be honest, if Brady didn't underthrow that pass, could have had an extra 40 receiving yards on that singular drive. So, to be honest, I'm not too worried about it. Now, the only thing I am worried about is that typically against the New Orleans Saints, Mike Evans goes bye-bye. He literally disappears against the New Orleans Saints, and that is a fact. Throughout his career, Marshawn Lattimore has for some reason gotten into his head and made him disappear. Now, that being said, of course, that'll open up the options for AB and Chris Godwin to perform, and that's why I think Mike Evans might take a little bit of a step back this week. Might see a little bit less utilization, see less targets, and ultimately be not as great of a wide receiver as he typically is. Again, he's scoring touchdowns every week, and we love to see it. If he scores a 1-yard touchdown this week, that would be pretty awesome because he just continue that streak. But either way, Mike Evans, I'm not expecting too much from this week, but again, he's still a great play. Christian Kirk is my number 30. Christian Kirk, similar to like a Mike Evans play, is very touchdown dependent in my eyes. Christian Kirk in the past 2 weeks has had 4 receiving touchdowns. That in itself is an incredible number. Of course, they had really advantageous matchups against Seattle and Dallas. This upcoming week, they take on Miami, giving up the 10th most points to opposing wide receivers. Again, like we just mentioned earlier in the video with DeAndre Hopkins, Robert Woods, the best wide receiver performance of the year with 2 total touchdowns. Cooper Kupp was able to dominate against that secondary. Again, that secondary does not have a great slot corner. So if you can move around Christian Kirk a little bit, I know Andy Isabella and Larry Fitzgerald are probably going to get the most utilization from the slot. I still think that there is a good chance that Christian Kirk ends up having a great performance, considering how much this offense scores on a weekly basis and how potent the combination between Christian Kirk and Kyler Murray has been as of late. I think Christian Kirk should have himself another great week here. 31 is Sterling Shepard. Now, Sterling Shepard, the fact that he's had 18 targets in the last 2 weeks, kind of caught my eye. I think, of course, this is a guy that should have been picked up a couple weeks back after he scored that touchdown against Philadelphia. So now the question remains, what can we expect to see from Sterling Shepard? Coming off of this past Monday night's game, 8 total receptions, 74 receiving yards on 10 targets, 11.4 half PPR points, plays against the Washington football team, giving up the least amount of points to opposing wide receivers. I think when everyone's going to be distracted with Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard will get his opportunity. That's why I like number 2 wide receivers as much as I do with Calvin Ridley, Tyler Lockett, Justin Jefferson, Claypool. These are guys that are probably going to be pulling not as great as coverage and probably going, and Corey Davis. These are guys that couldn't get it done. I expect him to do so. And as of right now, Sterling Shepard just seems like a better option than Slayton in this offense. And he's getting more targets and consistent production. My number 32 for this week is Amari Cooper. And I think, the Dallas Cowboys aren't great. They're going to change their quarterback for the 3rd week in a row, whether it's Cooper Rush or the Gilbert guy. It doesn't matter to me. I think the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers give up the 8th most points to opposing wide receivers, I think Amari Cooper will be able to step up. I know Michael Gallup had the most targets last week with Danucci. CeeDee Lamb disappeared, but I expect Amari Cooper to kind of find himself again this week. Darius Slayton really did put a number on him. That's the 2nd time. I think that's maybe the 3rd time in his career which he's just been a no-show against Darius Slayton. But regardless, I think Amari Cooper should be a pretty good play this week, regardless of the quarterback play. I think the matchup just poses so much of an advantageous event for him that he could end up getting it done. Jerry Jeudy's my number 33. Now, here's the thing. If Drew Lock plays as well as he did this past week against the Atlanta Falcons secondary, which should be a very good possibility because, again, Atlanta Falcons secondary giving up a lot of points to opposing wide receivers and giving up a lot of points to opposing quarterbacks. Now, in fact, the stat that I wanted to bring up, 9 wide receivers have played against the Atlanta Falcons this year and totaled over 90 receiving yards. So again, they've given up a lot of yards. They've given up a lot of opportunity. The fact that Jeudy had 10 targets this last week gives me more hope. And I think this upcoming week with Drew Lock, they're finding a little bit of swag, a little bit of confidence in themselves. They can end up putting up some better performances as we progress. Cole Beasley's my number 34. Who doesn't want a consistent 10 points? Because that's what Cole Beasley offers this upcoming week. I know this past week against New England wasn't consistent enough in comparison to the week before, having himself one of the best games of his career. But that being said, Cole Beasley takes on a defense in Seattle that cannot stop wide receivers. I don't think John Brown is a viable enough play. He's just been a no-go and no-show for the entire year. Maybe he shows up just to spite me, but I really do think that Cole Beasley is just a safe play this week with Josh Allen being able to just find consistent numbers, catches, and just be a decent play at 34. 35 is Hollywood Brown. I know he went out and he said that he wasn't happy with his total overall, kind of opportunity with the team. He doesn't like his role right now. And I don't blame him. 2 targets, 1 catch, 3 yards, and a touchdown against, the division rival in a game which, if he got more utilization, could have been a huge factor. That is an unfortunate thing. Now, the question remains, what are we going to see against Indianapolis this upcoming week? I know the Colts can stop the run. I know the Colts cause turnovers. But can the Colts stop opposing wide receivers? In fact, I've gone ahead and looked at it. The Colts have given up 10-plus fantasy points in half PPR to 12 wide receivers this season alone. So again, I think there is a very good chance that Marquise Brown could have himself a bounce-back week. Just got to get himself more targets, more utilization. And Lamar's got to believe in his arm and air it out a little bit more. He's my 35. We move on to the final option here this week. It is DeVante Parker. So let's get out of the way here. DeVante Parker is in a very particular situation. I think Tua could have a bounce back week here or could crumble against a very solid defense. So it's going to be a matter of whether or not he uses DeVante Parker because that is by far and away his best receiving option. With Myles Gaskin gone, you're not going to be able to target Gaskin 6 times again, right? Every other receiving option on the team this past Sunday against the Rams had 2 targets. And the fact that DeVante Parker didn't see more is a shame. I think they'll go ahead and address that. I think DeVante Parker will have a great week. Those are my top 36 wide receiver rankings for week 9 of the 2020 fantasy football season. Again, thank you everybody for watching. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe down below. Click the like button on today's video if you like today's video, of course. And make sure you join the Discord community server. If you haven't yet already taken advantage of it, I can assure you, you will not regret it. Now, even for those of you who have never used Discord before, trust me, I talked to many people just this past week. They've never used Discord before. They joined. They cannot believe how easy it is to use and how, functional it is. And the fact that it's a free app, either way. Take advantage of it. Trust me, it's going to be awesome. Tomorrow, we'll talk about quarterbacks and tight ends before Thursday Night Football. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.